Hey everyone, Assalamu alaikum and good evening to everybody. Okay, so let's start with the session for today. Um, my name is Ikrama A Virk and I'm with Laser Technologies Pakistan and heading their HR department. The topic that we have today is around building strong resumes, and I understand that the purpose of the entire event is around job applications and securing employment, so it's an important part to understand how we can build our resumes and what perspective the HR or the recruiters have while they are looking at your resume. First of all, I would briefly describe what is the difference between a CV and a resume. So generally, when we are talking about a CV, it's more of a lengthy, in detail document that we have, and generally it's used within the education industry, where you have a length of experiences and researches and publications that you are going in detail. However, a resume is a short summary or a briefer version of your credentials, and it is generally used when you're applying for job applications. So this is the major difference, and generally we'll carry on with reviewing the resume and looking at the structure, how the resume is structured. So generally, keeping in mind that we are focusing on a audience that is coming with certain experience. We're not targeting fresh graduates, so the structure of a resume would be slightly different for fresh graduates and then for somebody who's coming in with experience. So the typical structure for experienced resources consists of, you have the contact information on the top. You briefly have your professional summary, and I would say that as much as you gain experience, this professional summary is more of a predominant part of your resume, and it also replaces your career objectives portion that you generally have at the start. So every employer especially when they're hiring an experienced resource, they are focused on what you are bringing on the table rather than just getting to know what are your objectives. Then we have a section where we are describing our technical skills, and especially within the software engineering industry, I think it is the topmost important area of the resume that the recruiters are looking at. So you need to sum up your technical skills or top skills that you have while applying for the jobs. Then comes the work experiences, and there you can list down all of the experiences that you have, and it's ideal to have that in an order with your recent experience coming up and then going down back in the dates. Um, and additionally, you can also put in your education, trainings, or any certifications that you have done and that are relevant. So if just to give you a flip side of it, if you are a fresh graduate, I think we can reorganize the structure of the resume. We can take the education part at the top. Similarly, for people who are coming in with experiences, they can take this education or certification part lower in the CV. So this is a typical structure and very recommended to have that. Generally, people don't follow a structured resume; they just put it in. So it's nice to have it in these sections. Okay, just a sample resume. I tried to fit it into the screen. So just as we saw in the previous slide about the structure, the contact information is at the top with your address, your phone number, and your email ID. And then, of course, the summary of whatever you have done. There is education and technical skills in this CV. And then, of course, the industry experience, and then some academic projects that we have done. So it can be structured or modified based on the requirement of the job, but generally it's good to have 4 5 headings at the top. So once we go into the detail, I will tell you about. I will keep referring to this particular sample, and we'll go into the details of it. Moving on, there are certain elements that apply to formatting or shaping up your resume in a consistent way. So first of all, as I mentioned, that whenever you're listing down your experiences, it has to follow a chronological order. Um, I come across many resumes where they have put their first experience on top, and then they've built it to the recent ones. So it should be the other way around. We should be having complete sentences. In this particular, I would say, factor that we have to consider is there's a there is a concept of 7 C's of communication, where you are looking at the conciseness, the correctness, the completeness of the text that you're putting in. So anybody who wants to do some research on the 7 C's, they can fit into their resume and apply it. So it will be concise, it will give a complete message, and it should be a correct one. um, Also, generally, we tend to write um, direct speeches where we're using words like "I did this in my experience," "I handled a project." So from the recruiter perspective, we should avoid using such words. It should be a first person indirect speech. So rather than saying that I organized an event, it should be organized an event uh, for the company, or whatever the details that has to follow. So this way you can keep it in the first person indirect speech. Similarly, it is advisable that you use the past tense, and even if you're writing about your current experience or current responsibilities, the moment you send out the resume, it becomes a past, right? So it has to be in the past tense, and whatever responsibilities that you are putting in, make sure that they are using active verbs like planned, directed, programmed, organized, advised, so reported, evaluated, these kind of action verbs, and they are in the past tense. So that will be your starting point of the responsibilities that you are putting in the bullet points, and especially if it is ideal to have those as bullets, so it's easier to read. It gives a very good look on the section that you are writing down under your professional experiences. um, Additionally, what we look at is the tools and technology or the environment that the candidate have been using. So sometimes it happens that there is a, since all of the audience is from the software background, so there are job openings where your core skill set might be relevant. However, your environment or the tools or other technologies that you have been using may not be relevant to the organization that is considering you. So it is always good to mention your tools and technologies within your every experience that you mention. So it gives us an idea that okay, these are the particular skill set that you have, and you have used them in this environment in your experience. We tend to avoid using fancy formatting. I have seen many resumes recently where there's a lot of graphic in it, there's a lot of color in it, there's a bold, italic. So all of this makes it messier format. It's not simple, it's not clean. So when we are reviewing it, it generally takes more time. It's more distraction to the reader. So we advise or we recommend that we keep it simple, clean format without using any boxes or fancy formatting. um, Absolutely essential to have a grammar check and spell check. The best way I usually advise is that ask someone else to do a proofreading of your resume, just like the publishers or content generators. They usually have someone to proofread their documents or whatever they have written. So a fresh pair of eyes would always identify common mistakes that you can miss out when you are writing your resume. um, Very okay, so we have a question. Please feel free to ask the questions. I will be reading your questions as we go and try to answer them. So Osman is asking about the company logos with attached links to work. Generally, you can write the company name itself. I don't think the logos would do any good, or even if you are putting up the links. Um, it is okay, but it will again consume space and it will allow distraction for the recruiter to click on it, go on the website when they you already have named it. So if there is any information that I require of your current employer, I would go to the website and check myself. So it generally creates more text on it. Yes, Suma. As far as we recruiters are concerned, we even take your internship experience as experience, because it is an exposure to the corporate world. So I tend to advise fresh graduates or even entry level graduates to usually have uh, you know um put in whatever experience internship that they have done. Okay, so yes, you should, Hassan, you should put in your internship experience even in the junior years. It also tells us that that somebody, even in their education, while they're within their education, they are making an effort to work with an organization, getting associated, and then try to bring or gain experience while they are doing their education. Okay, so moving on. The last point is very, very important from the recruiter's perspective. Uh, Generally, what happens is that when you are applying on different jobs, you are saving a different version of your resume, and then you are renaming them based on the version that you save, right? So I get resumes with name of CV, CV1, resume 1, resume 1 date, resume September 2020, stuff like that. So when we are putting it into our system or downloading or saving in some folder, after going through 100 plus resumes, we have like 20 odd resumes that have the same file name, with CV1 or CV resume. So we have to open it up, look into it, rename it, and then save it again. So the best way is that you should have your resume saved with an appropriate file name, and an appropriate file name can be your own name, and then you can put in your top key skill that you have or that you're applying for. So, for example, if I'm naming my resume, it will be Ikrama Ahmad Virk slash HR head or HR manager or HR director, whatever. So that way, when a recruiter downloads your resume, he identifies it from your file name that okay, this guy is ABC, and then a .NET developer, ABC Angular developer, ABC a Java J2EE guy. So it will automatically make him comfortable while he is reviewing the CVs again. Okay, any questions so far on this? I will go back to the previous screen. Yes, you should mention your freelancing. Absolutely. Any experience, freelancing, contract, internship, part-time, certifications, trainings, anything that you have done to gain exposure, that should be in your resume. Um, it really depends if you are talking about a fresh graduate doing a computer science degree and applying for a HR job. That will matter, yes, because we are looking for someone with a relevant background. However, if you are experienced resource and you have spent like I would say 5 years, 7 years in a field that is, a switch from your original degree, then it will not matter much. So we have people who have done computer science degree, and then they switch to human resource, and now they are technical recruiters within HR. So that actually helps us to have a CS background, and then they have moved into HR field. But if you're a fresh graduate, that would be not appropriate. Okay, just to move ahead, there are some styling and formatting considerations that we need to make. So we covered the first part, avoid fancy fonts and graphics and all that. The font size and the font itself, that should be very professional. Generally, it is recommended to use Arial font with 10 or 11 point size, so it allows you to put in enough information on one page. So even there are CVs that have huge font, so they only have like 7, 8, 9, 10 lines written on one page, and then the page ends. So you need to have that mapped as well. Okay, then it comes to the margins, leaving margins on the right bottom and top and left margins. So you should leave some space because uh, mostly what happens is that if a recruiter is taking a printout of your resume and passing on to the line manager, they would naturally write some notes on the side. They would naturally like to have some space where they can pen down their notes if they have any, or even for the sake of simple and clear um, resume, you should leave some margins on the sides of the resume that you have. What generally we see is that candidates who are applying, they have uh, in an effort to highlight their relevance or their key skill set, they tend to highlight or bold too much items on the resume, so that looks bad. It comes on the face, and it doesn't give a good look. So try to avoid doing too much bold on your resume. Um, Again, the physical appearance of the resume should be consistent. So on this point, I will go back on the sample that we have, and I will try to list down these considerations. So if on the start, if you see that when you are writing a company name or your experience, then you write the month, year of the working duration that you have. So sometimes it happens that if you use like February 2020 to present, then use the same consistent format throughout your resume. It should not be somewhere you are using an abbreviation for January Then in the next one you are writing complete January. In some of your experiences you are writing date as a complete four digit number 2020. In other you are writing it as a two digit only 20. So these kind of inconsistencies, they matter a lot. And if you are choosing to write a company name in capitals, then use all of the company names in capitals. It look bad that you have the first as a capital letters and then in sentence case. So these kind of consistencies, they are necessary to have. And as I said, ask someone to review your resume. So that is another important aspect to consider. Any questions so far? Again, when you are you know developing your resume or crafting a resume to apply for a job, it has to go for relevant job applications. It Generally, if you're talking about um, skills that are required for a technical position, yes, they should be there. For example, communication skills, for example, teamwork, for example, collaboration or presentation skills. So yes, you have to mention those as well. Those are important. But again, it has to be something that you can defend when you get a chance to interview, right? It should not be that you just for the sake of putting it there, you put it, and then when you are called for an interview, you are hardly managing to speak correctly or present correctly, and so forth. So that will be a disaster. Okay. So the advice these days is that when you are trying to apply for a job, try to tailor each application separately. Do not send one resume to all applications. It generally gives a negative outlook to the hiring managers, and also it does not create a standout effect or a relevance effect in your resume. So generally what we do is that whenever there's a job opportunity, we go through the job description. We try to make it relevant and try to highlight the relevant skills that we have. So in other words, you are tailoring your resume for each position. Also, the cover letters, they are still valid. Generally, when you are sending out an email with an attachment, so your email body works as the cover letter. And I have seen so many application that comes in with just the attachment. There hardly any subject line. There's nothing in the body, and they just send it out. So it affects your job application. You should write the subject line very clearly, that job application, position title, and probably your name. So that is a good combination to put it in the subject line. And then of course a cover letter, that again, all of the basics of the cover letter, that where you heard about the job, what is your key relevance to this particular position, how you can add value, and then call to action at the end, where you are trying to get an opportunity for a face-to-face meeting or an interview and stuff like that. So the cover letter, you should use the email body as your cover letter. In current times, your social media profile is also very important. As far as I'm concerned, whenever there is an application that we think is relevant, we straight away check on LinkedIn. For that matter, that let's counter check the profile on LinkedIn. So a number of time it happens that your LinkedIn is outdated, it's not relevant. Probably you've already moved on from where you were working. In your resume you have updated it, but on your LinkedIn profile it's still the old same. So you have to be careful on that part as well. The right way to list the skills, I think it has to be I would go back to the structure part. And when you are making a portion of technical skills, probably that is the area where you can uh, put in a very brief table of your skill set, and you can also divide it into your technical skills and your soft skills. That will be the best way, and I think the technical skills and the soft skills should be up at the top in the start of your resume rather than being at towards the end. So after professional services, it's an ideal place to put in. Okay. Again, as I said in the first point, that you need to tailor your application while looking at the keywords in the job posting, but it should not be that you pick up so many buzzwords or keywords that it looks that you have overcooked your resume. So if you are repeating, if there is a requirement of, let's say, Java developer, you can mention that your experience should show in a flow that you have been doing Java development, but making it overcooked would be a kill off. Okay, so moving on. Also, there is some consideration around having professional email addresses. Cute guy at hotmail.com looks bad, so you need to have that sorted out. The date format and the phone numbers should be up clear, separated. You should also not mention your physical characteristics in resume. So people have mentioned height, or whether they are physically strong or stuff like that. So avoid that. And a rule of thumb is that you should keep your resume um, concise to one page for every 5 years of experience. So generally it comes to that. It can be plus minus, but generally for every 5 years, it should be one pager. We are running out of time, so I will move quickly to the next. I think there are just a couple of slides. So anytime you write a CV or develop a CV or are going to apply for a job, you should ask these questions to yourself, that whether whatever you have built up will produce an interview or not. Is your resume showing a match with the job posting? And also that it you should take a reader's perspective to your resume, that whether when you are reading your resume, does it apply that your skill set, your experience is a match, and the reader can understand what you have accomplished or done so far. um, a quick, I would say, recent developments around resume writing is that it you yourself have become a brand, right? So these are the questions that you should ask yourself, that whether you have especially audience from the CS background, they should question themselves whether they have a personal website. Are they active on social media? If somebody asks for your portfolio, do you have that? And also, do you have a blog where? So all of these things add on to your credibility, your credentials, your chances to stand out. um, on the recruiter side, we are generally reviewing your work experience and your current employer, so it gives us the information that how relevant you are to our requirement. We are also evaluating your skill set around with the job description, so a counter match. And then we do check your LinkedIn profile. We also map relevant certifications. So if there is a project manager position, we are looking for at least some sort of a training, some certifications, any PMP and stuff. And then we also evaluate your training achievements. Okay, so some of the lesson that we have learned is that a resume is your personal advertisement, and it allows you to distinguish yourself from the crowd. And you need to be honest while putting up content on your resume. It can be bold, but it can be it has to be honest. And all of these effort is to basically stand out in the application process, and your resume should be such that it gets you through to the interview stage. So I would stop here. I thank you all, and if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, so Bilal, the details of the body in the email, I would suggest that you do some research on cover letters. So you will come across that the cover letter starts with where you heard about the opportunity, how you are relevant to this particular position, what value you can add, and then at the end, it's a call to action statement where you are, you know, persuading or try to persuade the recruiter to allow them to have an in-person meeting or an interview or a discussion to go over your experiences and allow you a time to meet. So that would be a good content. Do not write please find attached without any other information. It generally it is taken as a very rude behavior where you just putting it to the recruiter to do the opening, download, read your resume, and then get back. So there, although we do go through all of the resumes, but generally it's advisable to have a very well thought out subject line and then a cover letter as your email body. Every I think every recruiter has his own ways, but I would, of course, I have my own opinions, and given the experience that I have, generally it's not about completing the sentences. It's about having the correct or complete information that you're trying to present. So just for example, if you are trying to tell me that you have been working in J2EE, but my requirement is somebody having J2EE or Spring framework experience, but you only have a Java development or a front end development, Java development expertise. But for the sake of just writing it or matching it to the profile, you tend to write the information that you also have expertise around J2E. However, it is incorrect. So the purpose of saying is that you should have it concise, complete, and correct information. It can be, again, my Usman, my advice would be to be honest about whatever gaps there are on your resume, and if there is an accident, we will not be too much bothered about it as long as you are able to justify your experience that you have and how relevant you are to the current position that we have. So there are companies and recruiters who focus on these gaps that you have, but generally companies who are looking at your expertise and your attitude and your skills, they would overlook if there are gaps that were due to some accident or injury or any such reasons. You should disclose the gaps. Certifications, I would say it depends on the job. If you are fresh graduates, I would advise you to focus on trainings more than the certifications, because if I see that as a fresh graduate you have attended a number of trainings which are relevant to your job application, I would be more than happy to invite you for an interview. So for fresh graduates, relevant trainings are necessary. spend some time, attending trainings or events or stuff like that? Okay, so I think we are just beyond the time limit. So if there are no other questions, I would like to wrap this up. Thank you so much for being a patient listener, and I hope that uh, the session was valuable enough to add any tiny bit of learning to your, uh, you know. Thank you so much.